So I've been playing a bunch of Fortune's Foundation lately, the Zachtronics Solitaire game. This is like the they call it the hardest mode in the game. It's one which is very easy to make permanent mistakes in. And when I first played it in the game, I really didn't click with it very well. I found it very frustrating to make any kind of progress, but it's kind of clicked with me. And so I've been really enjoying it lately. I've been playing a bunch of it, and I thought it would be fun to talk through a game where I think through what I'm doing vocally and yeah, just explain the process. I'm not like big into solitaires in general. I don't have like a background. I'm sure there are communities around where they've got like specific language and ways of conceptualizing these games. They can vary quite a lot in terms of their specific content. The basic rules tend to be pretty simple, stacking up cards from disordered stacks into ordered stacks. I just think this is an interesting variant and one which has really captured my interest. So I'm going to open the game, and so you can see at the bottom left there. This is potentially going to be win number 500 for me. That's why I thought this would be a good time to do it. So you'll immediately notice that this is not a standard solitaire. It involves tarot suits, tarot arcana, and whatnot. So the black cards are the major arcana, and the white cards are the minor arcana. The minor arcana work very much like your traditional solitaire suits. There's 4 of them, and they stack onto the aces in the upper corner, as you can see, upper right corner. They so you stack 2 on top of the ace, 3 on top of the 2, blah blah blah. On the top left side is where the major arcana go from 0 to 21, and the one that you place last sort of gives a little fortune for your game. That's the theming here. One small detail about this is there is a hold space. The upper right, the minor arcana placement can hold a card. While a card is being held there, you cannot stack any of the minor arcana on their home place. So that's just something to be mindful of. But while that's up there, you can still do major arcana. That's one of the subtleties in this game. So in approaching one of these games, as I mentioned earlier, this mode is very easy to get tied up in knots in. It's very easy to get confused or to think something's going to make progress by organizing a few cards together and end up losing the ability to actually maneuver properly. The way I approach these generally is I find I have much more success even if something looks entirely natural and normal, to stop and think about it for just a couple of seconds and consider what problems it may create for me. There is in solitaire games, it's generally not a big problem to take an opportunity and just, put some cards up in the top space. They've got the two of cups down here, the red 2 of cups. We can put that away pretty easily. It wouldn't be difficult, but it may create problems for us down the line. So we just want to be a little bit mindful of that. And I'm sure some of these situations will come up as we play. One thing I sort of conceptualize in this game is the concept of like knots occurring. This feels to me like unpicking a large knot, and so I will hopefully have an opportunity to talk about those as we go. I don't see any just now, but they tend to form as you play if you're careless, and I am definitely that. So immediately just scanning the board here, if we want to get started a little bit, I see there's a lot of high value major arcana, and sort of near the top we've got the 19, 18, 17, we've got the 14, the 15, the 16, the 13, the 21. We've kind of got all of the high value ones fairly near the top. The 7 is kind of blocking the 15 and the 21, but if we end up moving the 17, the 14, it won't be too difficult to clear those up. The problem I see potentially is that the 1 is in the way of that. The 2 is very far at the back of the stack, and the 0 is somewhat buried beneath those other ones. Another thing that's visible to me is the red cups. The 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are pretty close to the surface. So is the 7. So we might be able to clear those pretty quickly. So what I'm going to start with here is not entirely clear to me at the moment. One thing I might want to do is I might want to use the 19 as like a base here. We don't really have a lot of reason to worry about what's underneath the 19. So I might want to start stacking the 18, 17, 16 on there to create space for me. What I would love to be able to do is to create another empty column like this one. These empty stacks just provide so much maneuverability. I'll probably get into that a little bit more later. So I'm going to do that as a starting point. It's a pretty strong way to start. I think I'll move the 5 over here and that'll give me some room. So that sort of starts us on the path to what we were talking about before of potentially being able to move the 7 out of the way, the 15, and that'll give us access to the 21, which will allow us to actually start getting rid of the 20s in the way. Over here, the 20 Arcana. But that's not the end of the world necessarily if we've got these nice and tidily put somewhere. Sitting potentially on top of the 19 here. Which we have to be mindful of when we move that. Once we've moved the 19 off this place, we can't put it back there. So yeah, one thing you'll notice about this mode immediately is that you can't move stacks on a oneer. That's not uncommon in Solitaires, but it's not necessarily something people will be familiar with if you've only played standard ones, like the sort of Klondike Solitaire. So yeah, you can only move one card at a time, which means if you want to move a stack, if I want to move this 19 stack over onto the 20, for example, I can't just move it directly because the 16 doesn't go on there. I have to move it into an empty space, and then over into the stacking position. I can't do that just now, but that's something we'll almost certainly be doing a bunch of. So yeah, I've got a couple of options here. I could either move the 13 here over to the 14, but that'll carry on blocking up the stack here, or I can move the 14 onto the 13 and sort of open up the 1 for very little plan. I think I like moving the 13 now actually. We're intending to eventually move the 14 onto the 16 anyway with the 15, so it feels like it makes sense to me to not worry too much about it. And if we do this, we get one little benefit here, which is 2 little benefits I can see actually. One is we've got the blue swords 7, 8, 9 that we can move, and we got the 2 and the 3 as well, so once we've cleared this, they get put into their place. This also allows us to open up. We can potentially move the king down here, or we can move the queen up. I'm liking that. We can move the queen up, we can move the whole thing. Yeah, if we move the cup queen onto the king, we can then stack the 7, 8, 9, 10, jack, queen all together over here. It blocks the red 9 of cups and the yellow 9 of coins, but we don't really have a need for those immediately. It would potentially be quite nice to get the 8 and 9 of coins together, and it would make it potentially a little bit easier to clear up the reds, but I think given how things are lining up just now, I think I prefer that bit of organisation, making 2 available, which will allow us to stack the 3, 2, 1 major arcana together, allowing us to clear space. This is sort of like the approach that seems to work best in this. So I think this is good. If we want to move this off, we will potentially have an avenue with this king over here, but the 7, 8 of cups are kind of around that king, sort of tied around it, so I don't think we'll be able to do that very freely. I'm going to move the 2 onto the 3 now, because that's kind of the plan anyway, and that gives us 2 empty columns, which is really nice. My plan right now is to get to the 15 and the 21, so that we can stack these together. Yeah, so the 4 will go into the stack on its own, so that's nice. So I'm going to just do this. The 8 is not available now, but it will be shortly, so I'm going to do this. And now that's available, and now we can stack them both on top of the 9. Which I'm okay with. Okay. Now it's becoming apparent to me that the 6 is going to be very important here. The 6, 10 point here, we've got the 7, 8, 9 here. We can't really do anything with the 7, 8, 9 until we get down to the bottom of this stack. That's a little bit awkward because we've got the jack and the 9 of wands in here, and we want to get the 10 to have anything to do with that. The 10 of wands on the right there is making that a little bit tricky. We could access the 0 pretty easily actually. The 0 arcana is, the 0 major arcana is very easy to get to, but we may be able to do it in a bit of a tidier way. Yeah, so we can do this in a slightly tidier way, I think. So I am going to move the 8 over onto the 7. And yeah, there's no reason not to do this immediately. This just clears that a little bit up, and that's really nice. That also allows us to move this stack, which I really like the look of at first. But before anything, we've got this king queen. The king can't get placed onto anything except an empty space, so there's basically no reason not to do this and make it right way up, make it accessible, even though the jack is a little bit out of our way, and it's about to come even more out of our way. We're incentivized. There are very few times in any such game, but very few times when you have a proper no-brainer of an option where you can do whatever you want, or rather you can do an action with no consequences, no negative consequences. There's basically never a downside to putting a stack that terminates in a king so that the king is at the bottom and not being surfaced. The other card is almost all. I can't think of an exception. Maybe there's an exception, but I can't think of it. So I'm thinking of moving the king queen off of here, and that will immediately, the 3, 4, 5, 6 of cups will immediately get taken away. So that'll open up a column immediately. So I'm okay with that. Generally speaking, if a move will close a column but then immediately open a column through either no extra moves or a couple of extra moves, I'm very happy to just go ahead and do it. Similarly, but not quite the same, I could move the queen over here and just move the 3-2 into the empty space to clear those away. That puts the 10 of coins in open space, but we can't really do much with that. It would just be kind of a filler. But what that would give us is one empty column and one column with just a single card, which is actually a lot of freedom to move things. Let me demonstrate that. An empty column is great because you can move a big column, like a big stack like this, without having to think of inverting it, because you invert it twice in the process, you uninvert it in the process. With a single card in a stack, you can do the same by just moving it into the hold space. Having both available, ideally you don't want 2 empty stacks, or as many empty stacks as you can get, but yeah, the more empty stacks you have, the fewer stacks you have to soak up all of the variance you have, all of the knottedness, the tied upness. A large spread out knot is in some ways easier to untangle than a tightly balled knot, and that's kind of what we're thinking about if we work too hard to organize small areas of it, we might end up making the whole thing less organized, more complicated, more entropy in a smaller space. Yeah, that being the case, I like the idea of moving this queen stack, this sword queen stack, onto the 6. That will allow us to move the 9 of cups just out of the way for now, and we'll have the 9 of coins, which we can move that off onto the 8 of coins, and we can move the 10 of coins onto that, thus giving us a bit more room to breathe. So I'm going to do that, and see, this is where these empty stacks really come into their own. It just saves us a lot of faff. We can then do this, and we have 2 fully empty stacks now. That is great going, very handy, makes us work. I've only just realised, and this is something that will happen a lot in this game, this sword stack, we can just get rid of it, right? We've got the 4 of swords up at home, so the 5 is the next card we need, which means we get this lovely little riffle. Cool, we're in great shape. This one is getting towards solved. One thing I will say is it's very easy, shockingly easy, to mess up one of these games. I've been at stages more solved than this and tied myself in a knot and ruined it. So to try and deal with that, I'm going to deal with this stack here. I'm going to just bring it down, use one of our empty spaces, and I'm going to clear up a bit of room, and then strategically I'm going to move so I can start cleaning up the major arcana. This should be relatively clean. It will fill some space but then empty some space very rapidly. And yeah, we're on track here. We're in good shape. Just gonna move that down. At this point, we're basically in the home run stage. We just have to clear things up and try not to break anything. But we are getting close to done here. This is actually a very simple one. I've had much more complicated ones. I did try to record this once and had an absolute monster of a shuffle, and couldn't actually beat it. I ended up tripping myself up. But that's it. It's going to just handle itself for now. It's automatic, and that's win 500 for me. It's got the Hanged Man. That's ominous. Um, I don't know how this is going to come together, but I hope it was informative to some extent about the thought process that goes into solving this. I know that I've seen written that people struggle with this mode, and I certainly struggled with it when I first played it. But it's about, I think people think of Solitaire as a very just play it, have fun, don't think about it too much kind of game. This is not that kind of mode. You really do need to actually think through your moves and consider what might get broken by a decision you make. Um, but I hope you can see the appeal of this now, and if you have played this before and bounced off of it, maybe this will give you the encouragement to give it another go, and maybe another 500 goes like I did. Please help me. I can't get away. I can't stop